Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos and welcome to my guide to the Quaking Affix. Now Quaking is an affix that pretty much everybody thinks that they understand, but what most players don't know is there's actually quite a bit going on behind the scenes with this affix, and that's what I'm going to try and teach you with this video today. Let's start off with the basics of the affix. Every so often, there'll be an earthquake. Your entire party will get a little circle around them, then 2.5 seconds later, the earthquake will hit. You'll take 20% of your maximum health and damage, and you'll be interrupted and locked out of any spell casting that you were working on. Additionally, if you were stacked inside anybody else's circle, you'll take an extra 20% maximum health and damage. So 2 people stacked on top of each other are going to take 40% each. And obviously you can see why 5 people stacked on each other would be bad. Seems pretty simple, right? Wrong. Quaking is at its deadliest when it comes as a surprise. Say you start doing a big pull, there's a lot of damage coming in, so your druid starts casting Tranquility, then a quake starts coming. So your druid has to stop casting their Tranquility, the big damage continues, plus everybody takes 20% of their health from the quake, and then your druid doesn't even have Trank to top everybody else up afterwards. It's a disaster, and it doesn't need to happen, because you can actually tell when quaking is going to come. Quaking doesn't happen at random times. The way it works is that at 20-second intervals throughout the dungeon, the game will randomly decide whether or not there's going to be an earthquake. And you can track this. So if you use a weak aura, you can actually have one on top of your screen that just is counting down, and it says, hey look, in 7 seconds there might be an earthquake. And you can decide, all right, I'm not going to start casting my Trank 3 seconds before an earthquake might start, because then I'm going to get locked out of my cast, or I'm going to have to stop casting, and it's not going to be effective, right? You can also decide, all right, you know, this complicated skip that we're about to execute, or this big pull that we're about to start with high damage up front, or this boss fight, let's wait 3 seconds. Let's wait for this earthquake, and that's the best way to mitigate this part of the problem. While we're on the subject of weak auras, I'd also like to mention that if you're a caster, you should probably pick up a weak aura that lets you know whether your cast is going to finish before or after the earthquake hits, because that's vital information. I'm going to have links in the description of this video to both a weak aura that will tell you when the next quake might come, and a weak aura that does that if you're a caster, so you might want to pick those up. Quaking can also be a threat when you're confined to tight spaces, like the hallways of Waycrest Manor or Toldegor. That's because when you're in that small space, right, and you're trying to spread, you're much more likely to accidentally cleave onto somebody else, because there's so much less room to spread. The way that I recommend dealing with this is to pull stuff back to the large open spaces you've already cleared. So once you've cleared the courtyard in Waycrest Manor, do the next pulls from the hallways, pull them back out to the courtyard, right? That gives you a lot more room to spread for quaking, it doesn't cost you all that much time, and it's a great way to mitigate this affix. And then the final big threat with quaking is when it overlaps with boss mechanics in a problematic way. So I'm going to give you some examples now to give you an idea of what I mean. In Freehold, the last boss, Harlan Sweet, if you're fighting him in a confined area because you've skipped the trash before him, and you're trying to keep your cannon barrages confined to a tight space, and then a quake hits, you're going to have a lot of trouble, right? You're stacking to make those cannons go in the same spot, but you also need to spread to not cleave everybody with quaking. So that gets a lot harder than it normally is. In King's Rest, the Council of Tribes, this one's actually really brutal. There's a boss that does a backhand on the tank, and that applies a 200% increased physical damage taken debuff to that target for a couple seconds. And quaking is physical damage. So if you get a quake while you have that debuff applied to you, and you've just taken a massive amount of damage, it's going to deal 60% of your maximum health instead of 20%, so that's fun. You're going to die. So avoid that if you can. Try not to have a quake hit when that happens. I don't know, I don't have a good solution for that one. Just good luck. In Temple of Sethralis, there's Galvazid, the third boss, and that one is already a difficult boss. It's a hard DPS and HPS check. The DPS check isn't usually affected too much by quaking, but the HPS check certainly is. If one of his AoE pulses goes out at the same time as people are on high stacks from the pillars, and there's a quake at the same time, so your healer can't even continue casting whatever global they're on, that is a disaster. So that fight gets a lot harder. It's almost as hard as Tyrannical Week. In fact, one thing you'll notice if you look at the list of affixes is that quaking never occurs in the same week as Tyrannical. I think that's because Blizzard knows what's going on, and they know that quaking makes some of these bosses, even on fortified weeks, almost as hard as they are on Tyrannical weeks. So that's just a thought about how that goes. In Underrot, on the last boss, you're forced to stack for the Cleansing Light mechanic, but you also are forced to not stack when you're getting quakes. So that's a little bit of anti-synergy between the two goals there. In Toldegor, the last boss fight there, sort of like the one from Temple, the third boss in Temple, there's just a lot of healing required, and there's spots where there's high damage done to multiple members of your group. That's a recipe for deaths with quaking if it lines up at a bad time there too. And then finally in Waycrest Manor, the Heartsbane Triad, much the same way, difficult boss, particularly when the second one is active, there's a lot of damage going out on everybody. Or when the third one's active, there's a huge amount of damage, but on just one target. If either of those things overlap with a quake, that can be really, really brutal. Some of these can be solved to some extent with the weak ore solution I mentioned earlier. If you're aware that a quake might be coming in 5 seconds, you can potentially do a better job of using defensives on incoming damage that is going to be problematic before the, so if you use that to stop you from getting low, then the quake is going to be less likely to kill you. But some of it is just, good luck, get good, I guess. Thanks for watching my guide to the Quaking Affix. I hope you found this useful. If you did, you might enjoy some of the other content on my channel. I have guides to other affixes. I'm working on a guide to the Rogue class, specifically the Assassination spec, which is what I play. And I have guides to dungeons. So I have VODs of our high-level dungeon keys with my commentary laid over the top of those. So you might like those. Please subscribe to my channel, like this video, and all that stuff. Appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.